My parents left me to start new families, and now they want me back. But I don't like them. At 15, I thought life was about exploring friendships, discovering passions, and making mistakes with a safety net of parental guidance. Instead, my world became a balancing act between two households, each with its own new family drama. Neither had room for me. It wasn't just that my parents had remarried. It was that, in their new lives, they had inadvertently or perhaps conveniently reshuffled their priorities. My father married Clara, who he'd been having an affair with during his marriage to my mother. She'd already brought her son Jacob into the marriage, and soon after, she gave birth to Mia, my half-sister. I'd hoped to be a big sister to Mia and maybe even a friend to Jacob, but it was clear from the start that I was an outsider. The mantelpiece was covered in family calendars marked with their activities. I was never included unless it was a reminder for my weekend visits, which they seemed to dread. I often felt more like a guest than a daughter. At the dinner table, conversations flowed around me about schools I didn't attend and people I didn't know. When I tried to contribute by sharing stories of my own experiences, I was often met with distracted nods or polite smiles. Before long, the focus would shift back to Clara's children, and there it felt like I was a minor inconvenience, disrupting the well-oiled routine of their household. My mother's house wasn't much better. She had remarried Mark, who had always been kind to me but distant, as if he were unsure of his role in my life. They had Emily, and it became clear that she was the center of their world. My visits there were marked by a sense of displacement. Toys and baby gear filled the living room spaces that the space I once used for homework or watching TV was now filled with toddler needs. I tried to engage with Emily as a helpful older sister, but I often felt more in the way than useful. I once suggested going to the park for some family bonding time. We actually planned a picnic with Emily's playgroup for this Saturday. My mother replied, her voice tinged with apology. I could see it in her eyes, but we'll try to do something together soon. It never seemed to happen. Promises like these often disappeared into thin air, lost amid diaper changes and play dates that didn't include me. My room at her house, which once felt like a sanctuary filled with my posters and books, had slowly turned into a storage space for Emily's things as she outgrew them. I felt increasingly alienated. I spent more and more time alone, retreating into books and writing journals. I wrote stories where I was the hero, the cherished daughter, or the adventurer on epic quests. Anything that took me away from the reality of my situation, these writings became my escape. It was a way to live 1,000 lives in worlds where I mattered. As summer approached, I looked forward to spending time at my grandparents' house. My grandma always had a way of making me feel loved and seen. She'd listen to my stories, teach me recipes, and talk to me about her own life with a genuineness that was sorely missing in my interactions with my parents. Even that refuge was tainted when my father told me they were planning a 2-week vacation to Europe with Clara, Jacob, and Mia. The trip fell during my scheduled time with them, so I asked if I was going to see my father. He hesitated, his eyes darting away before meeting mine. He said, "We thought you'd enjoy some time at your grandparents'. We'll call every day and we'll plan something special when we get back." He promised, though the hollow in his words echoed in my chest. They did go to Europe, and the daily calls were brief, often filled with the noise of their excitement and adventures. I tried to be happy for Mia, who was always talking about castles and gelato, but each call felt like a knife twisting deeper into the wound of exclusion. My mother, on the other hand, was overwhelmed with her work, and Emily's calls to her were equally sporadic and rushed. "Mom, can we talk? I'm feeling really left out." I tried once, hoping to bridge the gap. "Oh, honey, it's just a busy time right now. Emily, oh, you know how teething is. We'll talk soon, I promise. Love you." The promises became as empty as the looks of sympathy from friends who noticed my growing withdrawal and sadness. It's like they don't really see me anymore. I was worth more than being an afterthought. It was during one particularly lonely night at my grandparents' house that summer when I realized that if I kept waiting for my parents to notice me and value me as more than just an obligation, I might wait forever. I was fueled by a mix of hurt and determination, so I made a decision that would change the course of my life. I wasn't going to be a secondary character in anyone's story. not even my own. I packed a bag and I wrote a note to my grandparents and took the first bus to Aunt Lucy's house, looking for acceptance and love. I wanted to be seen and valued. What I found was the start of a new chapter. I would no longer be overshadowed or overlooked. Instead, I could start to heal and grow into the person I was meant to be. The bus ride to Aunt Lucy's was the longest 2 hours of my life. Every mile seemed to stretch forever. As I sat there, wrestling with a mix of fear, relief, and uncertainty, I stared out the window, watching the landscape blur and my thoughts racing as fast as the scenery passed. The decision to leave hadn't been easy, but the stifling feeling of being an afterthought in my parents' lives had grown unbearable. I needed a change, a place where I could be seen as more than just a complication in someone else's family portrait. Aunt Lucy lived in a small town that always felt a world away from the city. Her house was a cozy 2-story house surrounded by a well-tended garden that bloomed with colors most of the year. It was a place of many summer visits where I had always felt welcome and loved. As I stepped off the bus, the cool air of early evening brushed against my face, carrying the faint scent of jasmine from Aunt Lucy's garden. I dragged my suitcase behind me, wheels thumping rhythmically against the pavement, a staccato beat to the turmoil inside me. Aunt Lucy was waiting at the door as I approached. She gave me a look that was a mixture of concern and surprise. She didn't say anything at first, just opened her arms wide. The hug she gave me was tight and warm, a silent reassurance that I had made the right decision. "Aunt Lucy, what's going on, honey?" Her voice was gentle, inviting me to open up about everything. "I just feel like I'm invisible there, like I'm just a guest in their lives, not a daughter." We sat down in her kitchen with a pot of tea between us as I told her everything. The neglect, the loneliness, the feeling of being perpetually out of place. Aunt Lucy listened, her brows knitting together in concern with every word I said. "Aunt Lucy, you're not a guest. You're family, and you always have a home here with me." The decision to stay with Aunt Lucy wasn't made. It was the result of years of neglect and the realization that my parents were absorbed in their new lives and might never see me as more than an obligation. As we talked, Aunt Lucy didn't just offer me a room. She offered me a chance to reset my life on my own terms. "Can I stay here at least for a while?" "Of course you can stay as long as you need. We'll figure out the details later." The next few days was a whirlwind of activity. Aunt Lucy helped me enroll in the local high school, and we visited the town hall to formalize my living situation with her. Despite the chaos, there was a growing sense of stability and support that I hadn't felt in years. The true test came when I had to tell my parents about my decision. Aunt Lucy stood by me as I called them. Her presence was a calming force. "Dad, what's this about you staying with Lucy? Is this some kind of teenage rebellion?" I was a mix of confused and annoyed. Stung, but I was prepared. "It's not rebellion, Dad. It's survival. I don't feel like I'm part of your family anymore. I need to change the conversation." It was difficult. It was filled with pauses and strained justifications. My mother cried, and my father argued, but I held firm, bolstered by Aunt Lucy's quiet strength beside me. "Mom, but we're your parents. We love you. You can't just decide to live somewhere else." "I can." I needed to be somewhere I felt wanted and valued. The call ended with a heavy silence, and it was clear that my old life was over. I was officially living with Aunt Lucy, going to a new school, and slowly rebuilding my sense of self-worth. School was a fresh start. I made friends who knew nothing of my family drama and accepted me for who I was, not who my parents were. My grades improved as a result. I found I could concentrate without the emotional turmoil that had clouded my mind before. Aunt Lucy encouraged my writing, pushing me to submit stories to local competitions and magazines with each published piece. My confidence grew, and writing became more than a hobby. It was a way to process my emotions and reclaim my voice. Months turned into a year, and with every passing day, I felt stronger and more grounded. Aunt Lucy and I grew closer, and our bond strengthened through shared meals, long walks, and endless conversations. "Aunt Lucy, you're doing great. I'm so proud of you. Your words mean a lot to me. They helped fill the void left by my parents." Their calls became less frequent, and when they did call, the conversations were short. Even on the phone, the distance between us was clear. Living with Aunt Lucy wasn't just a change of scenery. It was a complete transformation of my daily life and mental state. The first few months were a mix of adjustment and discovery, as I got used to the new dynamics of my life in a small town where everyone seemed to know each other. Aunt Lucy's house, with its welcoming warmth and walls lined with photographs of happy memories, became my sanctuary. Aunt Lucy had always been the family matriarch, the one everyone relied on during tough times. Her ability to listen without judgment and her unwavering support gave me the courage to open up about my feelings. The challenges I faced, she encouraged me to explore my interests, particularly my writing, which had always been a private escape for me. Aunt Lucy, you have a gift. You know your words have power. Why not share them with the world? Her encouragement led me to join the school's literary club, where I met other students who shared my passion for stories and storytelling. Under her guidance, I started to compile a portfolio of my work, submitting pieces to student journals and local publications. The first time I saw my name in print, I was thrilled. When I saw my work in print, I got a real buzz. It was a sign that I was doing something right. School became a place where I could excel without the shadows of my family drama looming over me. I made friends who liked me for who I was, not for the drama that followed me around like a shadow. My grades improved significantly as I found myself able to focus on my studies, no longer preoccupied with navigating the unpredictable waters of my parents' attention. Dear Literary Club Advisor, I'm so grateful for your support. Your perspective is insightful and unique. You could really make a name for yourself in the writing community. They encouraged me, but it was Aunt Lucy's continued support that really pushed me to aim higher. She set up a small workspace for me in the corner of the living room. It had a desk, a comfortable chair, and shelves filled with books from classic literature to contemporary fiction. It was my little haven within in our home. I could write, think, and dream there as months turned into years. My writing portfolio grew. I tried different genres and styles, from poignant short stories to compelling essays on human nature and personal identity. My writing started to gain attention beyond the local community, with invitations to participate in regional workshops and conferences. Aunt Lucy saw what you can achieve when you believe in yourself. I'm just so proud of you, but it wasn't all smooth sailing. The emotional scars from my past with my parents sometimes resurfaced, especially during holidays or family gatherings when they were absent. I was more aware of it. I struggled with feelings of abandonment and self-doubt, wondering if I had been too harsh in cutting them off during one particularly low moment. Aunt Lucy found me staring at a blank page, the cursor blinking on the screen. Aunt Lucy, what's wrong? I just sometimes wonder if I made the right choice. Was it too much? Aunt Luke, you did what you needed to do for your own health and happiness. That's not selfish. It was a selfish thing to do, but it was necessary. And look at how much you've grown. Her words were a balm to my troubled mind. She taught me that it was okay to put my own well-being first. She showed me that my feelings were valid and needed to be respected, even if that meant distancing myself from those who couldn't provide the support I needed. I leaned into my writing even more, using it as a tool to work through my emotions and to connect with others who might be going through similar experiences. My blog, which started as a small personal project, began to attract a wider audience. People from around the world reached out to share their stories with me, telling me how my words had touched their lives or given them the courage to make changes for their own well-being. Thanks for sharing your story. It's like you took the words right out of my heart. You've inspired me to seek happiness too. This connection with my readers fueled my passion and reaffirmed my decision. I knew that to pursue a career in writing, it wasn't just about crafting stories. It was about making an impact and weaving my personal truths into narratives that could resonate with others. As I approached the end of my high school career, the prospect of college loomed on the horizon. I applied to several programs, each step forward a mixture of anticipation and anxiety. When the acceptance letter started to arrive, each one felt like a confirmation of my new path and the life I had chosen to build away from the night before my high school graduation. I sat on the porch with Aunt Lucy and looked at the stars. It was a clear night, and the sky was filled with twinkling lights. I told her, "Aunt Lucy, You're going to do great things. No matter where you go or what you do, remember that you are loved, you are seen, and you are capable of incredible things." I thanked her for everything. I don't think I could have done any of this without her. Her smile was soft and proud. "Aunt Lucy, you did the hard work. I just provided the space for you to flourish as I prepared to step into the next chapter of my life." I carried with me the lessons I had learned from Aunt Lucy: to value myself, to seek out environments where I could thrive, and to never underestimate the power of a well-told story. My journey was just beginning, and I was ready to see where my words would take me next. The high school chapter of my life is over, and college is calling with promises of new beginnings and further independence. I chose to attend a university with a strong creative writing program, not just because I love writing, but also to shape my future and become more than just a writer. I wanted to become an individual, beyond my troubled family background. The transition to college was exciting but also scary. I was finally on my own, navigating a larger world filled with I was exposed to a lot of different voices and stories. My dorm room became my new sanctuary, and I quickly plastered the walls with inspirational quotes and snippets of my favorite poetry. It was there, amid the quiet hum of late-night oil burning, that my first novel began to take shape. Roommate, you're always typing away. What's the story about me? It's about a girl finding her place in the world despite her family. It's kind of like a journey of self-discovery and resilience. Roommate, that sounds intense. I can't wait to read it someday. I'll let you read it someday. Her casual interest sparked a further drive in me. I spent countless nights refining my characters and weaving in elements of my own experiences with fictional twists that allowed me to explore deeper themes of betrayal, acceptance, and healing. Classes were a revelation. Professors challenged my thinking and stretched my abilities. I thrived under their guidance, soaking up every critique and discussion, using them to fuel my writing. One professor in particular took a keen interest in my development. "Professor Harding, your voice is unique. Your narrative technique is sophisticated for someone your age. Have you ever thought about publishing your work? It would be a great way to validate your skills and challenge yourself. I've always wanted to publish, but it's always felt like a far-off goal." Professor Harding's encouragement made it seem more attainable. I think about it a lot, but it still feels daunting. How do I even begin? Professor Harding's advice was to start by sharing your work, entering competitions, submitting to journals, and getting feedback. It's all about taking those first steps. I followed his advice and started sending out pieces. I sent my work to various magazines and entered every writing contest that seemed a good fit. I got a lot of rejections, but each one was a small victory. By my sophomore year, I had a short story accepted in a writing competition. The story was about lost childhood and the quest for identity. It resonated with many people and I got a following. I also got a call from a literary magazine editor. They said my story had touched many of their readers. They wanted to feature it. I was really pleased to hear that more of my work had been recognized. It was great to know that my experiences and my voice had value in the wider world. It gave me the motivation to finish my novel, which was a cathartic and transformative process. Balancing academics and writing was a challenge, but the discipline it required shaped not only my time management skills but also my priorities and ambitions. My novel became my thesis project, which was a culmination of my college experience and personal journey. With graduation approaching, I was excited about the prospect of new beginnings. My novel is now complete. It's a manuscript brimming with the essence of my struggles and triumphs. The process of querying agents and publishers began a daunting phase filled with hope and uncertainty. Then, just a week after graduation, a call changed everything. The agent said, "We love your manuscript. It's raw, powerful, and beautifully written. We believe it has significant potential. Let's talk about your future." The offer to publish my first novel came as a surreal moment of triumph. My work, once a private solace, I was so excited to share my story with the world, but I also had this overwhelming feeling of anxiety about how my deeply personal story would be received. The months that followed were a whirlwind of edits, cover designs, and marketing plans. I was involved in every step, determined to make sure that the final product was true to my vision. When my novel finally launched, I felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. Holding the first printed copy of my novel was a moment of profound achievement. The cover, featuring a lone figure standing at a crossroads, perfectly encapsulated the essence of the journey within. I managed to capture the essence of the journey within Aunt Lucy. I always knew you could do it. This is just the beginning. My dear. Her pride in my achievement was a balm to the lingering doubts about my family's absence in this significant moment. They hadn't been part of this journey. Their interest in my life had waned to sporadic, almost obligatory calls that barely scratched the surface of genuine connection. The novel hit the shelves and was met with enthusiasm. Reviews praised the authenticity of the narrative and the compelling voice of a new author who had not only written a story but lived it. Book review. A stunning debut that delves deep into the complexities of family and personal growth. A testament to the resilience of the human spirit as interviews and book signings filled my schedule. I felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond professional success. My story was out in the world, touching lives, encouraging others to face their past and forge their own paths. This chapter of my life, my journey as a writer, wasn't just about overcoming the neglect and invisibility I felt as a child. It was about reclaiming my narrative and proving that out of neglect could come strength, and from invisibility a spotlight that shone on my own terms. My journey was a testament to the power of perseverance, the importance of supportive relationships, and the transformative impact of owning one's story. As my career began to blossom, I was excited for the next chapters and ready to explore new stories, new challenges, and new chances to make an impact as my first book found its audience and made a place for itself in the literary world. My life changed a lot. The once uncertain writer who felt neglected and invisible was now standing confidently on her own 2 feet. She was recognized and respected in this new chapter. It wasn't just about embracing independence. It was about facing the past and dealing with the complexities of potential reconciliation with her family. The success of her book brought unexpected challenges, including the reemergence of her father. My parents were suddenly interested in my life, which coincided with my growing public profile. My father was the first to reach out. He sounded a mix of proud and awkward on the phone. "Dad, I read your book. You've done well for yourself. I just wanted to tell you that I'm proud of you." "Thank you, Dad. It means a lot to hear that." The words were polite, but I felt a surge of mixed emotions. His praise was something I had longed for. I had hoped for a different outcome, but now it felt empty and complicated. I was navigating the waters of newfound fame, and my mother was also trying to reconnect. She sent emails filled with apologies and explanations, trying to bridge the gap of years with words that seeped with regret. She said, "I know I wasn't there for you as I should have been. I can't change the past, but I hope we can build something new, maybe start over." I felt the old pain of being abandoned, and the desire for a family that cared was mixed with the pain of their neglect. I turned to Aunt Lucy for advice. She always had great wisdom. "Aunt Lucy, you have the power to choose who you let into your life. Whatever decision you make sure it's for your happiness, not out of obligation or guilt." Her advice really resonated with me. I was no longer the powerless child who was just looking for attention. I was an adult who knew how to set boundaries and demand respect. I agreed to meet my parents separately to see if we could make things right. The meetings were emotional, and we talked about old hurts and new hopes. When I met my dad at a quiet cafe, we talked awkwardly at first. We avoided the deeper issues, but eventually we got to more personal stuff. "Dad, I missed a lot, didn't I? I'm sorry for that." The book opened my eyes to a lot of things. A lot of things I didn't want to see before. It wasn't just the book, Dad. It was years of feeling left out. "I'm glad you're seeing it now, but it's hard. It's really hard." The conversation was a start, a small step towards understanding, if not yet forgiveness, with my mother. The encounter was similarly fraught with a history of emotional neglect that couldn't be undone in a single meeting. "Mom, I should have fought harder for you for our relationship. I let too many things get in the way. Can we try to make it right?" Maybe, Mom, but it's going to take time. I can't just forget the past in the midst of these tentative reconnections." I've been lucky to experience joy, new relationships, and continued support from friends and readers who connected with my journey. Book signings and literary festivals not only bolstered my career, but also reinforced my sense of community and belonging in the literary world. One particular event stood out: a panel discussion on family dynamics in literature, where I shared the stage with other authors who had explored similar themes. The panel moderator asked me, "Your books touch heavily on family and forgiveness. What drives you to write about these themes?" I told him, "It's personal. My writing is. It reflects the complexities of my life, the struggles with family, the journey towards self-discovery, and the ongoing process of defining what forgiveness means to me." The audience loved it, with many saying my stories gave them the courage to face their own familial challenges. Independence wasn't just about living apart from my parents or succeeding on my own. It was about owning my story, controlling how I let it define me, and choosing how and with whom I shared my life. As time passed, my relationship with my parents gradually started to improve. There were still some difficulties, with old wounds reopening and the distance between us making it hard to bridge the gap. But there were also moments of genuine connection, with phone calls that didn't feel obligatory and visits that didn't end in tears. "Dad, I'm learning more about you and myself. It's not easy, but I want to try. This means a lot to me. Dad, let's keep trying." Reconciliation wasn't a quick process. It took time, understanding, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths about ourselves and each other. As I wrote the final chapters of my second book, I thought about how much I'd grown and changed in the past few years. My narrative had expanded beyond my own story to touch the lives of others. In doing so, it had changed me. Independence and reconciliation were themes that ran through my life as I kept writing to heal and to hope. The words I wrote were a testament to my journey. They were a declaration that despite the past, the future was mine to write. This was in the burgeoning light of my career and evolving personal life. I looked forward to the unfolding chapters. I knew that whatever they held, I was now the author of my own story. I was free to craft its path with wisdom, courage, and an open heart. Edit. People think I just made it up. They think I am a moody teen. This is when you are at a friend's house. When you feel like you shouldn't be there, that your parents don't particularly like you, and you're tense all the time. That's how I felt at their houses. I know my stepfather doesn't like me much, and my parents would fight about who keeps me longer. It wasn't about wanting to have me around longer, but I took her last weekend. It's your turn, too, to plan fun activities for the day after I leave my father. His wife often scheduled visits to the parks or bigger trips specifically during the weeks my mother had me. My mother and her husband would leave me alone at home so they could go out with the baby as much as possible. They would send me off to grandma's or my aunt's place with some excuse and then do family stuff. When you went through the houses, there were barely any pictures of me. They had big portraits of my siblings and them together, but almost none of me. They sent me to my grandparents for the whole summer and only called twice when there were family events. I was often left out, like when my dad had a family barbecue and didn't invite me. They forgot my birthday on more than one occasion, and when they remembered, they got me a $10 Starbucks gift card, even though they know I don't like Starbucks. They didn't say it, but they didn't hide it either.